Larry Magid, and this is Doing Tech Right, a podcast from ConnectSafely, where we and our guests speak about parenting, tech, and related topics, along with strategies and policies to make tech safer and more civil. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe and visit us at ConnectSafely.org. Ovee Dardwalker is a high school student from the San Francisco Bay Area and is founder of the nonprofit Tech Me Kid, which pairs teenage students with senior citizens that need help with their technology. She also works on teen mental health issues and internet safety, and is on SNAP's Youth Advisory Council. Ovee, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Larry?
I'm great, and I'm really excited about this because I understand that you do some work with seniors, which,
I
of course,
do.
I am one of those people. So I don't know if I'm interviewing you or getting therapy from you, but tell me about the work you do with seniors and with everyone else that you work with.
Yes, I would love to. So, to kind of give some background, TMK is a platform that connects these senior citizens to these tech savvy students in order to teach basic technology, right? And so, this organization I started during COVID when I experienced, my grandma, she was living at home. She had all the possible devices needed. Like she had a computer, she had a phone, but the problem is that she just didn't know how to use it, right? And she became isolated from her friends and family. She didn't know how to use the basic things, right? Like she was asking me basic questions and I would answer and I would know it off like second nature, right? But the problem is she never grew up with any of this technology. And so because of that, she was isolated and she felt the really negative effects. And luckily I was always there for her, but I knew that, her friends and her other senior citizens did not always have someone that could answer their questions and be available for them at any given time.
Well, I just want to say before we go on, I want to make one statement,
Mhm.
maybe in defense of myself, that not all seniors, I want to make sure that we don't stereotype any group, age, race, gender, anything, right? Just like
Yeah.
there are plenty of, you're a junior in high school, there are plenty of people who have stereotypes of you and your generation, which probably
Mhm.
don't apply to most people. There are, myself included, some very tech savvy senior citizens.
Yeah, I agree.
Bill
I agree.
Gates is almost 70. Vint Cerf, who's credited with being one of the inventors of the internet, is in his 80s. So anyway, my point is that I hope that you're seeking out folks that need the help of whatever age, but not stereotyping that all seniors. And the reason I bring this up is I've seen products aimed at seniors, and I feel offended by the assumption that we all need additional help.
Yeah, exactly. I love that you brought that up because I think that there's definitely a very broad spectrum of how these abilities kind of reign within seniors. I definitely met seniors who are on the more experienced side, like they're very tech savvy, they know how to use all their devices. But I've also met seniors who, they just have their phone and all they know how to do is they know how to send a text message, right? And so my organization is really done to address everyone on that spectrum, right? Like we have volunteers for every type of people and we have questions, we have personalized sessions for whatever that person needs. So it depends on whatever they want to do, whatever they can do.
Okay, so all defensiveness aside, because I really love what you're doing, talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges that some of your clients have as seniors. You mentioned many of them have devices, but it sounds like there's for some at least, a limited breadth of knowing how to use them.
Yeah. I think there is a very wide spectrum of what you can do on your phone and what is most commonly used, right? Most people I work with, they know how to use like basic functions, right? They know how to send text messages, they know how to call, and they know how to send pictures. But I think there are a lot of services that are out there currently that are so beneficial to these seniors that they don't know how to use, right? Like Uber is so crucial. DoorDash is so crucial, ordering groceries online, Instacart, all these features can massively benefit these seniors. And I think that that's really what our organization aims to do is teach them this technology that can benefit them and help them in every way in their life. Also, a really big part is about cybersecurity, especially due to the rise of AI and new hacking and new technologies that we really teach them how to defend themselves and how to make sure that they are living safely online.
And a matter of fact, a lot of seniors are targeted because
Exactly.
criminals presume them to be vulnerable.
hmm
And I'm wondering, one of the things where people use a technology that they didn't grow up with, there's often a fear
Mm-hmm.
And it ranges from I'm going to break this if I touch it to something
Yes.
horrible is going to happen to me as a result of my using it. I know
Yeah.
people who refuse to go online because they're convinced that the
Mm-hmm.
moment they go online, something, some predator is going to harm them.
Yes.
And they worry
100%.
about their kids and their grandkids for the same reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've definitely met people who they accidentally switch to another app and they think that all their information will be stolen, right? Or their password will be leaked. And so there's definitely a lot of apprehension about being in a space where you don't know everything fully. So I definitely understand that 100%.
We talked a little about attitudes. As you work with your volunteers, your fellow teenagers, what are some of your challenges when you do the training that some of your volunteers have to overcome to really be effective, compassionate, supportive mentors to seniors?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really understanding who our audience is, right? Like our main audience are seniors who are very apprehensive about technology. They're not confident, they're not familiar with this. And so it's definitely a very big challenge to adjust from going to, talking to your friends who know technology, who are as quick as you, to someone who really wants you to slow down and to really make sure that you emphasize every step, going back, making sure that they understand it, talking slower, making the font size bigger, just really getting onto the speed of who they're talking to. And that's definitely been a very big challenge, right? Like sometimes they get impatient, sometimes they just want to do the steps for them and then teach them later. But the biggest thing that I would emphasize is just, patience and making sure that you understand who the person you're talking to is.
One of the things we think about at Connect Safely, where we mostly advise parents about safety and well being, is
Mhm.
that kids may or may not be technically more savvy than the adults that are working with them. But adults have been around the sun a few more times.
Mhm.
We've been on the planet longer and
Mhm.
often have something else, maybe call it wisdom, maybe call it judgment, maybe call it perspective, that maybe, with all due respect to your generation, maybe you haven't picked up on yet.
Yeah,
Are you able
yeah.
to perceive that and kind of work with that and make this a two-way street?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think in terms of the intersection between parents and children, there's definitely I would argue that, my parents are even more tech savvy than I am, even though, they haven't had access to the technology or they haven't learned it as young as I have. And I would say that they do a really, really good job of ensuring that my online safety usage is safe. And so I think parents, in my opinion, should, if they can, if they have the capability to, they should really ensure that their children are understanding how online safety works, right? Making sure that they have all the safety tools enabled, making sure that they have two-factor authentication, stuff like that, to make sure that their online presence is as safe as it can be. And this goes for seniors as well, right? I think my parents have put more security features on my grandma's computer, on my computer, making sure that all of us are safe online.
Hmm. Oh, it sounds like your parents are probably among that group of adults who are tech savvy. And of
Yes,
course, not all
100%.
are. But as I said, I know people in their 80s, even 90s, who are very tech savvy. But again,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that we all can't use some help now and then. In fact,
Yeah.
one of the things that I find, again, despite the fact I've been a tech journalist for more than 40 years, is that things change constantly.
Hmm.
And every day there's something new. Uh, Keeping up with, and by the way, it's accelerating more rapidly than ever. I mean,
I agree.
generative
Yeah,
AI, for example, is moving at a pace that's unheard of in the entire
exactly.
history of technology.
Hmm.
And I don't even know how anybody keeps up. But I mean, how are you? What are you finding in that regard to the kind of the rapid acceleration of change?
Yes, I think that it is the most unprecedented levels that I've ever seen before. I think all my life I've kind of grown up with the Google suite, the Microsoft suite, and then, now new things like with AI, with ChatGPT, with generative AI, with Gemini, Perplexity, stuff like that. And I think it's moving at a very, very fast pace. And I'm not sure how well we're keeping up with it. I think ChatGPT obviously has a lot of great benefits, but I think it also has a lot of harms that aren't talked about as much. And the pace at which we're trying to avoid these negative consequences aren't moving as fast as these technologies are being developed. I think especially in terms of like going back to seniors talking about these emails, there's spam emails, they're hacking emails. There aren't technologies that are being developed fast enough to combat this increasing threat of cybersecurity being heightened and being worse over time due to AI. And I think that's just a general message that this technology is being developed really, really fast, but the consequences of developing it aren't being handled with the same.
And then there are things that, we never had to deal with before. I mean, there's always been impersonations, but the fact that you can now accurately replicate someone's
I
voice
know.
on the
Yeah.
telephone
Yes.
and convince them that they really are stranded somewhere in the world and need bail money,
No.
but they're not. That wasn't around even 10 years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
The other thing, and speaking of senior citizens, so my wife recently became eligible for Social Security.
Mhm.
And she fills out her application and apparently doesn't fill it out correctly. So she gets this email from the Social Security Administration asking her for more details, and she blows it off as an obvious scam.
Mhm.
Then she gets a phone call from the Social Security Administration. Of course, she hangs up on them. Well, guess what? It turned out those were legitimate phone calls and a legitimate
Yeah.
email. And as a
Yeah.
result of her caution, she wound up not getting her Social Security till months
Yeah.
later. We had to actually
Yeah.
have an in person meeting. And
Mhm.
so I think skepticism is appropriate, but there's cynicism where you're so paranoid
Mm.
that you
100%.
avoid things that are actually helpful.
Mhm. Yes, I agree. I agree. There have been times where even I've brushed stuff off. That's definitely happened to me before. And honestly, I think there is no way that I can really differentiate the two. Like, if something looks legitimate, if I know the person sending it, like, there's always a chance that it could be AI generated. It could also be fake. Like, I think in the world of online safety right now, it's becoming so, so hard to differentiate between the two. And I think that is definitely an area where companies and people should be able to focus their efforts on to make sure that it's safer for people.
Right. And the problem is overcaution or inappropriate caution or
Yes.
misguided caution
Mhm.
can be dangerous in and of itself, and it can certainly deprive you of really valuable things like your Social Security check if you're
Mhm.
so paranoid. And again, she wasn't being paranoid because there really are scammers out
You're
there.
being
There's thousands of
cautious.
scammers that are impersonating Social Security agents, and it's really hard now to know
It
what's
is.
real and what isn't.
Yeah, I agree. I think over caution is definitely, it can have its limits, right? Like being cautious, there's a very blurry line between being cautious and being safe. And that line needs to be definitely made more clear in the
And
future.
when you work with seniors, and again, I know you're not stereotyping, but do you find that's a particular challenge with that age group more so than like your own peers, or you think it's about the same?
I would say it's definitely a bigger issue just because of the preventative measures that I think people in my generation are taking. Like, I think for me, whenever I get a spam email, I immediately block that email. I immediately unsubscribe, right? So I make sure that none of that comes back. And that for me is a routinely checkup, right? But I think for seniors, they have more of an attitude like, oh, I'll just ignore this. I'll come back to it. I won't do anything with it. But the problem with that is that they'll keep sending you messages. Like they'll keep coming and coming and coming to
Yeah.
the point where you're getting like hundreds and hundreds of emails every day, to which point it's overwhelming to do. And so I think for us, there's definitely a mindset of, oh, I have the ability to make this change right now, so I'll do it. But I think for seniors, it's like, I have to learn how to do it. And that's not something that I want to do. I want to just let it get over with and then I'll deal with it later.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
definitely
no,
the
I know a
attitude.
lot. That's funny you say that. I don't want to talk about anyone particular, but I have a certain person who's very close to me, and all she wants to do is solve the problem immediately, as opposed to prevent the problem in the future. It's not that she
Mhm.
doesn't want to prevent it, but it's just overwhelming for her. And an example of that, for example, is notifications. So by default, a lot of apps will send you notifications, right? And
Mhm.
so, again, a certain person very close to me, her phone's constantly pinging, constantly making
Yeah.
noise because she doesn't know how to turn off notifications for her apps or
Mhm.
realize that there's certain apps that you want to hear from and other
Mm.
apps you don't really need to know every time one of your Facebook friends
Yeah.
updates their page, right? I don't mind getting pinged when I get text messages, but I don't want to get a ping every time a piece of email comes in because my phone
Yeah.
would never stop pinging. And there
Yeah.
are people who don't understand those subtleties. I don't know if you talk about
Mhm.
that in your training.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. I think they just don't know the capabilities that tech has. I think like my grandma would always get these emails and I was like, "Why don't you just stop them from coming?" And she was like, "No, it's okay. I just delete them anyway." But why would you delete them if you have the chance to stop them from coming in the first place? And then she was like, "Oh, I didn't know that you could do that." And there's definitely a lot of gray area as to what what these seniors know is possible versus what they know how to do. So that disconnect is what we're really trying to focus on with our
You
organization.
know, it's interesting. I was thinking about this recently, not so much in terms of seniors, but just people in general. But I suppose seniors may
Mhm.
be more sensitive to it. There's a lot we have to deal with now that we never had to deal with before. I mean, scams. There's always been scams, always. But
Yeah.
I don't think a day goes by. In fact, I know a day never goes by when someone doesn't try to scam me. Now, I
Mhm.
haven't been scammed successfully, but I'm constantly on guard. You are too. You've started to talk about
Yeah.
it. I mean,
Mhm.
don't we deserve a more peaceful life than to constantly have to be on guard? It'd be like walking down the street and every person over your shoulder might be there to attack you. I mean, at some point it
Mhm.
becomes very stressful. And actually, we're going to talk about stress in a minute, but it's very difficult right now.
Yeah, I would say I would definitely agree. And I think the technologies that should be created to combat this stress that is being this anxiety about always having someone watching you, someone being able to steal your passwords at any moment, that technology to defend against that isn't being created as fast as these new technologies are being created, which I said before. I think that is definitely the biggest area that I personally would love to see improvements in, like maybe more authentication, more safety features that can obviously be used because
Right.
there will always be some way that someone can get your information
And,
online.
and the safety features have to be easy to implement. I mean, the automobile is a great example. Airbags are just automatic. You don't have to do it. If you have a car, it has an airbag, it just works. Seat
Hmm.
belts are pretty simple. But I
Hmm.
remember, for example, when there's a product called Pretty Good Privacy, and all my techie friends were saying you need to use Pretty Good Privacy. Well, it turns out you almost had to be an MIT graduate to figure out how to use Pretty Good Privacy. Nobody used it. It was just too
Yeah,
complicated.
yeah.
People saying you need to have a unique password for every site you use. I mean, come on, who's got a
Hmm.
memory like that? Nobody
Hmm.
does. I mean, all of these
Yeah.
things that are being asked of us are really beyond most of our ability to do easily. No, I don't care how old you are. I also understand you're on Snap's Youth Advisory Council. Talk a little bit about the work you're doing with Snap.
So, as a part of SNAP's Council for Digital Wellbeing, we are mainly focused on how young people are currently navigating social media and online safety. And currently, in our role, we are mainly working on reducing the stigmas of online safety, right? So, we found that there are thousands of unsafe and dangerous situations that are happening on social media every day. But the amount of those situations that actually get reported or they get blocked or they get reported for suspicious activity are barely a fourth of those situations. And so our role was mainly around reducing the stigma of reporting about blocking, making sure that young people know and are educated about the technologies that companies are designing to keep these people safe, right? So really making sure that people know about the reporting feature, they know about how to block someone, they know how to give feedback, they know how to make sure if someone is a real person or if they're a bot, or just generally being safe online, understanding those practices to take.
Interesting. So you advise Snap, but you also mentioned social media as a broader term. Snap
Mhm.
is one of several companies, obviously, that are doing this. Is your work benefiting people who are using Instagram or TikTok or
Yes,
other
yes.
services besides Snapchat?
Yes, the main concept is the same, right? The
Yeah.
whole idea of being able to block someone or report suspicious activity or making sure that you yourself are safe online is applicable to every social media platform. Not even on social media, even on like emails or even on messages and on everything on social media.
There's this tension about what the individual is responsible for, what the parents are responsible for, what law enforcement is responsible, and ultimately what industry is responsible for. So, the common thing that I hear all the time from critics of Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok is they should be safe. They need to be safer. And I agree with that. Just like I would say that cars need to be as safe as they can possibly be. But I don't think it's possible, at least for the time being, until we invent fully have self-driving cars, that you can make a car that's going to be safe if the person is drunk or careless or
Yeah.
very unlucky, right? You could be a perfect driver and somebody could crash into you. And I guess how you're feeling about this tension between what you and I can do to protect
Yeah.
ourselves in Snapchat or on TikTok or on Instagram or wherever, and what the company should be required to do to make our experience as safe as possible.
That's a really great point that you brought up. We talk about this a lot at Snapchat, mainly about whose responsibility is it if you get into a dangerous situation. And so really we focus on preventative measures rather than fixing up the mess that happens afterwards, after it's too late. And so we really analyzed how schools go about online safety, how they teach their children about online safety, how workplaces teach online safety. When we really focused on developing a curriculum that can be released to anybody who is online, anybody who wants to learn more about online safety, to make sure that they take preventative measures, make sure that it doesn't happen in the future. And a lot of feedback that we gave to Snap and other social media companies was that to really listen to these kids, right? They have great ideas, but they also have a lot of situations where they're not the problem, right? Maybe it was an accident. Maybe someone thought that it was someone else and they didn't realize it. And so there's a lot of disconnect in terms of that space. And a lot of big things that are happening on social media need to be considered from a youth perspective and understanding their perspective.
Yeah. So Take Me Kid sounds like a wonderful program, and we need to wrap up soon. So I just want to make sure people know how to get a hold of you, and if they need help or support. First of all, where do you operate? Are you national, or are you a certain part of the country? Where are you operating out of?
Yeah, so we're currently international across, I think it's over 15 countries now. We reached over 10,000 seniors actually through our program. And so we're available at any time and you can match with any student volunteer from over 15 countries.
And is there a cost associated with this for
No,
the user?
completely free. Completely
And
free.
who funds this? Where does it come from?
Yeah. So we have a bunch of different ways that we provide our services. We have events all across the world. We just had one in Florida the other day. We had one in Dubai the other day. And we have these events that are from our partners and our sponsors that we host all across the world. And we also have online classes for anyone who wants personalized help. We have videos, we have a chatbot, we have any communication that you would prefer for your tech experience.
Amazing. And this is all run by teenagers?
Yes,
Wow.
completely student run.
Thank you very much. Is there anything we should add? I want to make sure I give you an opportunity to introduce some topics that maybe I forgot to ask you about.
Yes, I think just to kind of close everything from our conversation today, not just in terms of seniors as well, but I think online safety is a very, very, very important and crucial topic to cover, especially in this day and age. And I think the technology to prevent dangerous situations and also to help from dangerous situations needs to be more developed going into the future. And I think for anyone who is listening to this and definitely wants to make a change, the first one thing I would say is to stay educated, learn about these technologies that are currently being implemented, and also learning about yourself and how to make sure that you stay safe online.
Ovee Dardwalker from Tech Me Kid, thank you so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you for having me.
Doing Tech Right is produced by Christopher Lee. Maureen Cochan is executive producer. Theme music by Will Magid. I'm Larry Magid.